All right. So, welcome to the Energy Masterclass on boundaries. So, this is my first masterclass that I'm doing in this series. I am freaking excited. I've been studying up on boundaries, seriously. So, the last few months, the last few years, honestly, have all been about me learning boundaries. I still feel like a total fraud telling you what's up with boundaries, but that's just an upper limit. I'm just going to soothe myself with that, tell myself I do have beautiful things to share. I'm excited to share them with you. We're going to do a lot of workshopping. We're going to do really what we can here to get some beautiful energy boundaries around each of you. I see some new familiar names. Good to see you. So we're going to hop in. So let's start with seeing, are you in the right place? So you're in the right place here if you're interested in energy perspective. So you know that you are not just a physical body, but you're also an energy body. And your energy body extends around you. Your energy body is a vibrating field of information, and that changes things. That idea that everything is energy and that we're energy changes a lot about how we can interact with the world, how we can see what's going on. So if you're hungry for that perspective, this is really, really the right place. This masterclass and the future ones as well. You're also in the right place if boundaries are something that are painful or confusing or weird or difficult for you. So that might mean finding it difficult to say no, or finding that you are always carrying other people's energy around with you. It might feel like you can't connect with other people because there's too much boundary. Might getting really into sort of codependent, ultra intertwined relationships. All of those are boundary issues. Feeling that you're always giving and not receiving in return as much. Those are all energy boundary things. So if any of that has been difficult or confusing or painful for you, you're really in the right place. This is what we're going to look at. And the third aspect that is important to acknowledge here, that you're here because you value your own empowerment, you value yourself, you value your own space, and also you value kindness. And sometimes that's a little bit of a difficult balance to strike when it comes to boundaries, because a lot of us stop ourselves from putting boundaries because we feel like we won't be kind or we won't be respectful to other people. So I would love to just see, is that you? Is that you? Oh, hi, Emily. Is that you? So type in the chat. Are you hungry for an energy perspective? Are boundaries hard? And do you value empowered kindness? So just type yes in the chat box. If you haven't found that yet, it is usually on the bottom of your screen, there's a little thing placed that says chat, and you can click on that and open. 3 out of 3 for Oliver. Yes, from Periel. Hi, Periel. All right. Well, then I'm doing a happy dance that you're here. And we're going to make some magic here today. Boundaries are hard to set, especially in a professional environment. Yes, totally. So happy dance. Do a little happy dance with me. All right. So let's create the environment to really get the most out of this masterclass. So wink, wink. First, we're going to create some boundaries. So that this can be really your place of full attention, I invite you to see what else is vying for your attention right now and set some boundaries for that. So before you even go into action there, I want you to find why. Why would you want to create some boundaries for this hour or so that we have together? What is important for you in this time? What is the intention that you're creating by creating this boundary, by creating this bubble around you so you can focus, so you can engage, so you can be fully here and get as much out of this as you possibly can. I want you to type that in the chat box as well. Why are you here? What is your main intention here? And what is valuable enough for you to put some boundaries? So if you see what I'm doing here, I'm setting the stage a little bit for how we can set boundaries. And then third step, I'd love for you to engage and do that. So take a moment, see if your Facebook is open, Messenger, if your phone's on a million notifications. So just shut all of those off for the next hour or so you can really have your own time. If you're maybe in the living room with everybody else around you, maybe you want to find a nice quiet room, close the door, whatever you need to do. And from there, I invite you to fully engage here. So I want you to take notes, to participate through the chat box, to participate by formulating your questions and asking those in the chat box. Even if it's me doing all the talking, we're here together and we're creating something together. All clear? All good? All right. Good. So we are essentially doing 3 beautiful things today. First of all, we're defining what energy boundaries are. So we all have a bit of a psychological idea what boundaries are, but here we're talking about them in an energy way. And then on top of that because energy is underneath everything, we can find ways to communicate them, etc. Second thing we're doing here is really digging into for ourselves. Why are they important? Why would boundaries be something you'd be willing to invest your time and energy in developing and maintaining really well? And third, this is the meat of today. We're going to do some energy exercises, is how to tend to them and how to energetically tend to them, but then also in real life, how that translates. Because as much as we're energy beings, we're also energy beings walking around the world, right? And those boundaries need to be communicated actually verbally sometimes as well. So we're going to look at all those 3 things. So many of you on this call live today do know me. I'm super excited that you're here. I really am. But some of you don't. And I am planning on having this have a replay and be available for purchase later. So some people do not have a clue who I am. So here I am. This is me. So that's my face on the screen, other face on the screen too. So where I'm coming from here is that I've been an energy therapist since 2013. This is my 6th year doing this work. And in this work, I really work with people's energy bodies. I work with them as information, as vibrating information systems. And what I notice is that so many people need some work on their boundaries. So much so that when I teach Reiki, one of the things that I add in the Reiki, if you've done Reiki with me before, you know this, you're doing all your Reiki, you sweep, and then I have you trace your boundary around you. These boundaries are really important for my clients that I work with this on. Often they're struggling with just feeling too much, feeling too many emotions from too many people, can't find themselves, can't know who they are through that, have a lot of difficulty finding what they want, what is true for them, how they want to move through the world. And that's when we work on boundaries. And boundaries are really about reclaiming your own space. But we'll get into that later. So I've been an energy therapist for 5.5 years now. And I've been teaching Reiki as well. And my way of teaching Reiki is really letting us come into this world of being energy beings. And in that, I teach the boundaries as well. Moreover, fancy word, when I teach Reiki, one really important thing is for my students to have their own boundaries, have their own space so they can stay neutral and not take on too much energy from other people. So it's really very important. Now, on a more personal note, I am an empath. So there's a lot of fuss around that word lately. My definition of that is really I feel. I feel a lot. And I feel a lot of other people's emotions, sensations. And so one really important question that keeps coming back for me is this mine? Is this mine? And that's something I teach very much as well. So before I discovered energy work and boundaries, I really struggled with this side of my being, of being an empath. I really would often feel really overwhelmed. As a kid, I would get quote unquote sick for weeks at a time and just stay home because the environment at school was too much for me. And I really would get really would get sick. I'm putting quotes, but I really see it as that that energy sensitivity, that too muchness, and then I would have to withdraw from the world. And what that looked like for me as a kid, like I'd be this bright, shiny, happy, lovely person around others, and then I'd come home and I'd be angry and frustrated, and like the dark side would come out. And really what was happening there in my energy is that I just didn't have any boundaries. So when I finally felt safe at home, I'd try to like get rid of all that energy through all of that anger and darkness. But since I've learned to hold my own space better, my empath side has become one of my greatest tools. It has become a true superpower. And I know a lot of people hear that for the first time and they're like, no, that's never going to be a superpower for me. And I believe the same thing. But I promise that if you learn the proper tools, you can let this become one of your greatest assets, because what comes with that is compassion. It allows you to truly understand other people. And it's healing. It's healing for the people that are around us. However, we really need to make sure that it's healing for us too, and that we take good care of us. And that's where the boundaries come in. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me. So Zach says he relates to almost everything I'm saying. Yeah. Okay, great. So let's move on here. So I got a little picture of me being a little boundary learner as a kid. So I just put some bubbles as a good metaphor. The one in the top left is me, and the other one's my little sister playing with some bubbles. So eternal boundary learner. All right, so let's begin. Let's take a deep breath in and out, and begin with a basic premise here. So we're asking the question, what are energetic boundaries? So for that, we need to start with that first idea of what does that energetic mean? So a first principle there is that we are actually a complex field of vibrating energy. So what that means is that your physical body is sort of denser energy, vibrating at a denser level, but there's actually a field, an electromagnetic field out of each one of those cells. And that field builds and is all the way, you can't see me fully here, but like a full arm's length around you at all sides. That is how far the vibrating energy field that is you is usually reaching. We do have some control over that, and we do things with our field. We sometimes make it tiny, we sometimes make it big. But essentially, there's information held in this field, and it's organized in different ways. It's organized through chakras, through meridians. There's going to be a masterclass on chakras in a couple of months, but essentially that's the main core today. So let's see. So if we're a vibrating field, there's actually an energy structure at the edge of that, and that is what we call energy boundaries. And what these energy boundaries do is they are like little computer programs that monitor the edge of your field and decide what is allowed in and allowed out. So you can think of this as your energetic immune system. So it has the intelligence to decide what kind of information is allowed in my field. Is love allowed in my field? Is kindness allowed in my field? Is this lucky event allowed in my energy field? Is this, can I become present to the giggles of the neighbor kid that is just full of joy? Can I let that energy of joy in? And what about other stuff? Like, what about that more negative energy? Am I letting that in, or is that staying outside? What about the anger my partner is feeling? Am I letting that in? Is that coming in? What about my coworkers? What are all their emotions coming in to my field? Am I letting that in? All their moods, all their things that's going on for them that day, is that coming into my energy field? Or am I letting that be out? So as you can maybe start seeing here is that as energy comes in, we actually kind of get an awareness of it and we let it into our field. So in a way, there's something really beautiful about having permeable boundaries, that we get that sensitivity. So I'm going to assume that I'm talking mostly to people who relate to the empath idea, that there's a lot of information coming in and it can feel a bit overwhelming sometimes. For this moment right here, boundaries are really at the edge and they are a program. The program really at its core, what it's really trying to do for us is protect the integrity of our energy field, protect the wholeness, that is it, us, while also allowing us to connect with the preciousness of other people. Like, we're not an island. We are connected to everybody else through energy. The boundaries are kind of keeping a protection there. So I'd like to pause here and just check in with you. If you'd be willing to do a little exercise to notice how are your boundaries at this moment. So I want you to imagine, you can close your eyes. I'm just gonna, there's something a bit crazy going here. Can you still hear me? Just type yes, please. Okay, thanks. All right, perfect. So what we're going to do is I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. And I want you to ask yourself, if there was a bubble around me right now, I could see my energy field as a bubble, how big would it be? And for some people, it's huge, like it extends the whole city. And for some other people, it's teeny tiny, and you only get like a few inches around you, or maybe even just 1 inch around you. So that's the first thing I want you to check. How big is your energy field? And if you don't know, you can just ask yourself, what if I did know? What if I did know? What would I see? And then I want you to just check, what are the barriers like at the edge? What is the boundary like of that field? Is it like a soap bubble, or is it more like a wall? Or is there really no edge? Or is it like a dome? Or is it like, it can be a million things. Or is it like a sort of prison place with bars in place? What does that look like? So just start playing with your imagination. What are the boundaries like here? And then finally, you can also check out, what is the shape of your field? Is it sort of bigger on top, bigger on the bottom, pretty round? What are your energy boundaries like right now? And while you check that in, and I'd love for you to type in what you're noticing. I'm just going to have a little sip of water. Good. Yeah, it feels like a magnetic field that is weaker and stronger in some parts. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, good. So I'm going to go to the next slide while I wobbly unsaid jello. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, and there's no right or wrong images here. They're all good. There's really sort of the only thing that matters is if it resonates and feels like it fits something in your experience. So a soft edge that's flexible, that moves a lot. Yeah, so we're starting to see here that there's probably as many boundaries as there are people, and as many ways that those boundaries will meet the world as there are people. And that's very much the crux of what we're going to start playing with here today, is seeing how your boundaries function, and are they functioning in the most optimal way for you. So you might notice, oh, they're working this way and it works really well for me in these contexts, but in these other contexts, I might need it to be firmer or less jello-like or whatever it is. Like a force field shaped like an oval, close to the body, but not constricting. Yeah, perfect. Good. So keep aware of that. So we're going to kind of go into really for ourselves here, exploring why boundaries are important. And we're going to start with looking at what healthy boundaries do for us. So healthy boundaries really allow for two non-conflicting things, but that we often get tripped up in and do believe somehow that they are conflicting. So those two things are intimacy, so being close to one another, and autonomy. So I love this image for that because you can sort of see they both have their own kind of flavor in their energy fields, and they do come together. And it's in a really beautiful, peaceful place. They're sort of co-creating a new place together. And they get to know each other, but they also get to stay in their own place and get to keep their own autonomy. So that we're, yeah, and keep their own autonomy. So who would like intimacy and autonomy? Me. All right. So when your boundaries are really healthy and you're having that intimacy and autonomy, the feeling signatures that go with that are really worthiness, feeling empowered, also contained, respected, connected, present, and communicative. So what then happens between you and other people is you're aware of what's happening in your own field, and you can actually communicate that with words so that they can interact with that. But you stay relatively contained. You're not bringing your energy all around people. So I'd love to pause here and just see what comes up for you around this idea of healthy boundaries. Are yours like that? Are they like that in all your relationships? It's contextual. Just start noticing how this works for you. And we're going to start looking at what happens when our boundaries are less healthy. And I just want to put a caveat here. I categorize as healthy and unhealthy, but unhealthy is really a placeholder for there's a reason your energy boundaries are configured in this way. That reason is probably responding to something real in your life. So our boundaries aren't doing things just to torture us, quote unquote. They really aren't. They're really our best solution to some challenges in our lives. So they are doing their best to keep us safe. So what can happen is that our boundaries start missing a balance. So either they get so open, there's so much exchange with the world around us, or there's so little exchange with the world around us. So it can happen that if our energy is too close, so some good reasons for that is being hurt. So I don't know if anybody can relate to after your first heartbreak. It hurt. It hurt so much, right? And there's a part of your energy that probably just wanted to close off. Some people say, I'm never going to love again. So that's a little bit that kind of like your boundaries wanting to close up. They want to protect you, right? That's the aim of your boundaries. So they'll like come around you, put a force field of like intense wall energy so that you can never be hurt again. Although when that happens, we also can't let love in, and we can't let appreciation in either. So it creates a sensation of being disconnected, often lonely, disappointed, hurt, angry, bitter. It can feel like you're like held back, and a lot of judgy energy gets stuck there. It also sometimes look when it's the boundaries are too rigid, it's like they're a bit of entitled energy, like you feel too worthy so much so that you can't meet other people where they're at anymore. So that's what happens when it gets too closed in. So some of us have too closed and too open at the same time. This is a very natural reaction. It's not wrong. Absolutely not. This is just something that happens. Yeah. So what happens when it's too open? So actually, I'm going to go back to this slide, and I want you to guess. Take a moment for yourselves and see, like, if the boundaries are too open, what happens then? What do we feel then? So just take a moment to look and put some answers in the chat box. Yeah. So, yeah, good. All right. So too open happens a lot for empaths. And again, it's not wrong, but what often happens is that as young children, and this is all children, as young children, we might have an experience of someone being kind of hurt around us or not well. And as children, we're these like compassionate little balls of love. So when we notice that somebody can't like come towards us and care us, we learn to extend our energy field and start feeling what's around us. Sometimes it's also when there's energies around us that aren't feeling super safe. So we start extending our energy field around and around and around and around and around. And so that you can start feeling the whole landscape, so that you can sort of move around, so that you don't offend anybody, you don't set off any like anger bombs, you don't step on any toes. And that way you can just smooth out kind of love everywhere. And that's a really beautiful strategy. And in some ways that works. However, when we're doing that too much and we don't have access to our own energy anymore, yes, we feel depleted. We feel confused. We start feeling everything everywhere. We feel overwhelmed, not sure what's ours, not sure what we want, not sure what's not ours. We're not sure we really deserve to receive anything in our energy container. We're, indecisive, unclear, afraid, but also irritated and frustrated and angry. So there's a lot of people who come to me and they say like, oh yeah, I don't feel anger. I don't do anger at all. But that's actually, anger is actually the emotion that's going to create the boundary so that they can start feeling contained again. And it's not about feeling, it's not quite about expressing anger. It's an energy here. So that's what is common in both cases. There's often anger, frustration, irritation. It can often, in both cases, lead to bitterness or resentment. So yeah, Emily's saying that she's got the mix too, open with some, closed with others. So what we can do sometimes is we can be sort of so open, and then some people we just like really close off. And sometimes it'll feel like, oh, I've given so much of my energy and now there's resentment and there's bitterness. So that can definitely happen. Both cases actually leads to isolation, because without good boundaries, it's hard to be around other people, either because you're feeling all their stuff all the time and you're getting drained because you're bringing out so much empathy in so much of pain that you want to take some more alone time. You want to isolate from people a little bit more. So I noticed when I really started working my boundaries, I had less of the I'm an introvert story. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I do believe there's people who are more introverted and people who are more extroverted, but I need a lot less alone time because I'm depleting myself a lot less when I am around people, because the boundaries are doing that work for me. And whether your boundaries are too closed, too walled off, or too open, both don't actually solve any conflict. They either entrench you in a conflict or they pretend like there's no conflict, but that often means you not coming up for your own needs, not speaking up for what you do deserve. So I want to take a little mindful pause right here and invite you to take a few deep breaths with me and just integrate what you just heard. And if you feel called to, just write in the chat box what's moving through you, what you're noticing. So let's take a few deep breaths. Just to come back to yourself, just to notice, what are your boundaries like right now? What is it like bringing all this awareness? What are your boundaries like? So Dahlia was saying that naturally she's kind of got those empathic boundaries, but she's learned to contain it more. That's amazing. Beautiful. And Emily, knowing there's the two sides. Mandy saying at work especially, it's difficult. Okay, so any comments or questions so far? Everything clear? When we're going to move on. So we're going to move towards, yeah. Okay, so we're going to address that, Mandy. So beautiful. So we are going to start looking at how to tend to your energetic boundaries. So I chose this picture because the bubble is a really beautiful metaphor, but I find a garden is a super nice metaphor for boundaries as well. So you can imagine your own energy space as your secret garden. And like this little girl, she's not necessarily, she doesn't have to be alone in her secret garden. She gets to have that beautiful golden retriever puppy with her because everybody wants that energy in their space. But there's also a fence around. And with that fence, we start deciding what can come in, what can stay out. So we're going to play with that image. So what we're going to look at here to tend to your energetic boundaries, we're going to look at a few questions. And these are the questions you sent to me beforehand, and they are amazing. I'm so glad you did that. So questions that were coming up are, how do I recognize when my boundaries are crossed? How do I get others to respect my boundaries? Super important. How do I enforce them without being negative or rude? And that's a big fear for a lot of us. That's a good question that kept coming back. And how do I keep them healthy? So let's move on to how to recognize when they're crossed. So first thing we need to think about here is that boundaries are actually a bit more complicated than just a fence. They're the garden and the fence, or they're the energy field and the boundary at the end of it. So we are walking around with this energy field at all times, meeting different energy fields at all times. And people have energy fields, but situations have energy fields, and houses have energy fields, and puppy dogs have energy fields, and everything around us has an energy field, and we're meeting that at all times. So I'm assuming that the question here of how do I recognize when my boundaries are crossed is really about how do I recognize when they're crossed in a way that doesn't respect the integrity of my being. So that's a little bit more what we're going to look at. But I invite you to take the larger perspective right now and see, just kind of using a metaphor, and we're going to use the garden this time. Is your garden purely energy that you've tended to, that you've cultivated, that is yours? Or are there foreign objects in this garden? So that's one way of really starting to ask that question. So I invite you to ask yourself that question. If I had a secret garden around me, what would it look like? So I invite you to do that with me. You can check again, how far around my body does it extend? Is there a nice fence around it? And then just asking the question, is there foreign energy here? Yeah. There's foreign energy here. So Veriel is saying there's lots of foreign objects. Her garden needs cleaning. So if you notice that, you can go ahead right away and start cleaning the garden. And that's cleaning up the energy. It's really the same thing. You're just using a metaphor. So you can get a wheelbarrow, start putting the objects in the wheelbarrow and wheel them out. You can do that. So my point in this here is really, as soon as we bring awareness to the question, we can start already having tools and solutions. And Emily's saying, yeah, she always feels more uncomfortable in the city. Yeah, absolutely. There is an energy field to city life versus nature. And a lot of people, and this is even demonstrated scientifically, will feel good in nature and feel good in a forest because the energy field there has a lot of harmony to it. So awareness practices. Another thing you know when they're crossed is, if we go back a couple of slides to how it feels. It feels drained, it feels overwhelming, it feels unclear, it feels angry and irritated and like I want to push stuff out. And that is a good and natural feeling that we're going to use later. Okay, so continuing with that. How do you get others to respect your boundaries? And that is a little bit the crux and the core of these questions here, is really, how can we have other people respect our boundaries? How can we own our space like a badass without being negative or rude, and from a loving place? Now, here is the tough truth. Yes, this is a tough one for everybody. This is the crux of it. And here's what I'm going to say. So if you are able to love, and if you are able to respect your own boundaries without being negative and rude with yourself, that's the place you need to be coming from for other people to respect it too. Let me say that again. Nobody is going to do this if you're not doing this. So you need to do the work first. You need to respect your own space enough, with kindness, without rudeness towards yourself, without making anybody else wrong, loving for yourself so that other people can treat you with that same respect. When we try to enforce a boundary and communicate a boundary from a place in ourselves that doesn't believe we deserve that, we actually are communicating the feeling way more than the words, and people respond to the feeling, to the vibration way more. So I'm going to turn this question around. How do we get ourselves to respect our boundaries? And that's the work we're going to do today. I got an amen from Oliver. All right. That's great. Okay. There we go. So that's my speech right now. You respect your boundaries. From that energy, it's easy to communicate outwards. Okay. So how do we respect them? First of all, it comes with an awareness. Okay? That awareness is really, you are worthy. That's as simple as it is. You are worthy to be treated with respect. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of kindness. You are worthy to be listened to. You are worthy. Okay? From there, you have to take a very courageous step, and you must decide to act as if that is true. Boom. But to say myself, yeah. So you are worthy. This is undeniably true. The only person that isn't aware of that is ourselves. And we need to start acting as if we are true, are worthy. Now, the second awareness is that for you to act as if you're worthy, you might need to be tending your garden. You might need to do some inner work. And that is beautiful, and that is good, and that is okay. So we're going to look at some tools here to do the inner work. All right. So first tool is questions, inquiry, loving inquiry. And these two questions are immensely powerful for this. So the first question is, what is the payoff for not enforcing this boundary? And believe me, there are loads. So again, I'm going to assume that most people here have the empath configuration. So a payoff for not enforcing your boundaries is that you get to look like a nice person. It's not necessarily true, but you get to think that about yourself. It's a big ego trick. You get to, it looks like you're helping other people, and often you are, but actually with this energy exchange where like you give your love and they give you their pain, you rob them from the empowerment to learn from their own pain. You rob them from that information that exists in them. So a payoff there is to not witness the discomfort that they might have when they become aware of something in themselves that they are not wanting to become aware of, because crossing somebody's boundary, nobody really wants to do that. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to hurt anybody. So saying you hurt me can be really confronting for somebody else. And that's what Mandy was referring to, I think, earlier, of like, how do I set a boundary? And then what happens if somebody becomes super angry with me? So the payoff is like, well, I don't have to deal with that. We'll get back to a few more insights around that. So you can start looking at for yourself, what are the payoffs for having the boundary, your boundary in the way it is right now? What are the payoffs for having other people's energy in your space? A payoff for that can very much be you are aware of the emotional landscape of the room. And you can use that information. You can navigate through that information. When I'm teaching, that is something that I use. When I'm doing my one-on-one sessions, it's something I use very, very much. The question is, do I hold on to it after, or do I let it go? That's a different question. But what are the payoffs? So I want to see, do you have any other ideas of payoffs you might have for having a very permeable, open boundary? And there might also be a payoff to having really close boundaries, is that you just get to have your own perspective. You just get to have your own life. You get to be right, quote unquote. You get to be in your own little world. Yeah, so strangers often tell me all their problems, which does help me put my own stuff in perspective. Sure, that's a good payoff. Yeah, that's a good one, Emily. Yeah. Yeah. And that's another way. And so sometimes our egos have tricks. When we get to know other people's stuff, we can put ourselves above or below. And yeah, that's a little bit of a game our psyches play. So that's the question number one. And this can be a little bit confronting. So it's an awareness question. And I do invite you to bring a lot of kindness, a lot of sweetness to yourself. So it's not wrong. It's not, any of that is not wrong. But from there, you get to have a new choice. You get to say, okay, I'm going to have to give up this benefit. Second question is, what do I need to feel worthy? What do I need to remember? What do I need to know? What do I need to tell myself so I can feel worthy enough to enforce my boundary? That's another important one. So I invite us to just drop in right now, have that with that question. What do you need to feel worthy? I know for me, sometimes I just need to be reminded. Or right now, it might be nice to just have my hand on my heart. Take a deep breath. And that restores my energy field, that restores things. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next tool. If any questions come up, don't hesitate to pop them in the chat box. If you are listening to this on a replay, I will have a space online. I think it will be my Facebook group. It will be part of the communications with this replay where you can ask these questions. I will be available to answer them. All right. Now, this is a very strange but effective tool, especially when your boundaries are crossed in a way that get you angry, irritated, annoyed, pissed, all of that good stuff. It's called conscious complaining. And what you do, you set a timer for a specific amount of time. 5 minutes is very good. 5 minutes is a very long time to complain uninterruptedly, completely, intensely. 10 minutes is like, ooh, good luck to you. You're gonna, yeah. Then you're gonna ask either somebody to hold a neutral space for you. And the neutral space means they're not going to egg you on. They're not going to agree with you. They're not going to look at you weird. They're not going to reject you. They're just going to hold space for you. So they're going to keep a neutral expression. Or sometimes it's easier to do this with an inanimate object. I have loved to do this with Kleenex boxes. Please don't use something that absorbs energy like crystals or water. They will absorb that conscious complaining. Don't drink the water after. But use something like maybe a Kleenex box or like curtains. I don't know, something that won't absorb it as much. Once you've decided your target and you put your timer, you complain. You complain out loud as much as you can for the full duration of the timer. What this does is it moves energy out of your system. It sounds like you might be amplifying, but really what this is doing with this timer really important, doing it from start to finish from the timer, is that you are intentionally moving the energy out of you. So you don't have to hold on to it. And you can be as mean, you can be as shitty a person as you could possibly want. It's just energy moving out. So who might want to try that one? Who might have that kind of energy in them that they need to move out? And you can just type yes in the chat box. So I'm going to have you try that one. Yep, perfect. Try that one later. Now, this one we're actually going to do together. It has the same kind of idea. So this is also to move energy outside of your system so that you can restore your boundaries and you can remember that you are worthy. So if you are willing to play, I invite you to sit nice and straight. And we're going to use the element of fire and the emotion of anger. So to do this scroll visualization, I invite you to sit nice and straight, spine tall. If you can, have your feet on the floor. And what you're going to do is you're going to imagine that your boundaries turn into fire. Beautiful, flaming, bright fire. If fire is really uncomfortable for you, you can choose a very bright color. What this does is it makes your boundaries extremely visible to both yourself and to the unconscious of other people around you. So it's a very hard stance. These are my boundaries. So visualize that with me. And then you're going to imagine that there's this big scroll inside of your space, but it's like the size of you. It's human sized and it's far from you, as far as it can be, while still being in your space. And it's kind of like an old style manuscript. What you're going to do is you're going to start throwing all the energy that is not yours onto this scroll. And you're going to allow yourself to feel the emotion of anger and use your anger to throw everything that's pissing you off, frustrating you, annoying you onto the scroll. And as it comes onto the scroll, you might see it as flashes of color. You might see people's faces. It's all good. It really is all good. Just let it go onto the scroll. And you might notice that you feel anger at first, and then the anger transforms into disgust. Follow the emotion. Allow then all the disgust to throw things out. It might flip into sadness. Then allow the sadness to flip everything onto the scroll. It might switch to a number of different emotions. It doesn't matter which ones. What matters is that you allow the emotion to flow, to move, and for you to move these things out of your space. And eventually you're going to notice the scroll is pretty full. At that time, what you do, you roll up the scroll. So take your time, still throwing things onto the scroll, filling it up with all that energy that is not necessary in your space anymore. And then you start rolling that scroll up using the energy of the emotion you're feeling. So if that is anger, roll it up in an angry way. If it's peaceful, roll it up in a peaceful way. If it's jittery, roll it up in a jittery way. If it's afraid, roll it up in an afraid way. Once it's rolled up, you're going to, still following the emotion you're feeling, you're going to throw it out of your space and destroy it. And then destroy it in a way that matches the energy of the emotion you're feeling. So if you're angry, you might want to burn it, or you might want to rip it in a million pieces, or you might want to stomp on it really angrily. If you're feeling sort of more sad and down, you can maybe put it in some water and let it float away, or you can maybe pour some water on top of it. If you're afraid, what you can do is you can put it really far away from you and just bury it and let the earth disintegrate it. Or maybe you ask a big spiritual helper to defend you against it and destroy it. Really follow what you feel feels good. And then once it's destroyed, you can come back to your own space and see how it feels. Is it clearer? You can let your boundaries not be fire anymore. Maybe they can become something else of your choosing. And just notice how that feels now that you've moved that energy out of your space. Sometimes you might feel a little bit sort of jacked up on energy. You can just stamp your feet on the floor a little bit, reground, and then remember that you're worthy of having your own space contained around you. Okay, so again, I'll just pause to hear how that was for you, what the reactions were, how that feels. So this tool is really good when you're feeling that sort of overwhelmed, angry, irritated, too muchness. It's a really good one. Or yeah, whenever there's anger. Because anger is the energy that's trying to restore boundaries. And this exercise allows the anger to do that rather than just stay stagnant in your system and flow around. Okay. Just move on to the next tool. Left me feeling very tired. Yeah, I can feel a little bit tiring. So you can see if you just want to tend to the tiredness inside. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, tired also. So you can tend to what's there. The next tool is way gentler. It's a simple visualization you can use multiple times a day. It's just imagining that there's a really big magnet in front of you, to the left of you, the right of you, back of you, doesn't matter. And it's going to pull out any energy that is not yours. So this is more energy out of your system. So that's just a simple tool and something you can do. And I want to move on to the next one. So if you feel tired, there's a possibility that you've been holding on to a lot of other people's energy, and other people, you've been storing your energy with other people. And so this next tool is about restoring that balance. So it's both about letting go of energy that's not yours, stuff that you don't want, and calling back the yummy energy that you've stored with other people. So you can simply create an intention to call your energy back. So one visual I really like is like if you're calling a dog and you're going, and you just call your energy back. And you might notice that it feels a little uncomfortable to do that because you feel like you're abandoning other people. But the truth is, you've already abandoned yourself by storing all that energy away from you. So it's about unabandoning yourself and calling that beautiful, healing, empathic energy back to you. So I invite you to do that right now. And this can be calling your energy back from other people, but also from situations, things you're obsessing about, people you're communicating with, the news. So this is calling your energy back for you to have. Yeah, and sometimes we need to call it back a few times. So another image that really helps is golden threads. So noticing if your energy is stored elsewhere, you can sort of follow the golden threads and then bring those golden threads close by again. And then see how you feel. And type it into the chat box. So you can, giving you a bunch of tools here so you get a bigger toolkit. But you don't have to do them all at once. The sixth tool is really the crux of it here is we're going to use some visualization to patch up your boundaries. So like what happened earlier with the garden, we looked at, are there foreign objects here? Does some cleaning up need to happen? So in the image, you can actually do the work. So you can start taking out the foreign objects. You can, and then you can look at the fence in your garden. Is the fence, does it have holes in it? And can you repair that fence? Is it just one huge big old wall? Nobody can go out, nobody can come in. Maybe you build a window in there or a door. Is it a really transparent and it's actually not keeping anything out? Maybe only the really big things like I don't know, like a cow couldn't come in, but bunny rabbits and foxes and any of that can come in, and you can check, do I want it to be that permeable or do I want my fence to be a bit stronger than that? And you do it in the energy space. You really patch it up. So with your fence, that's a good way of looking at it. And with your bubble, you can look, are there holes in your bubble? And if there are holes, can you patch them up? And so you can use something like a golden spackle or any kind of spackle to start patching them up, kind of like you're working on a house or a wall. I use some spackle. Are there any rips or tears? Maybe you need to sew them up. Do you need to stretch it out a little bit, sort of allow you to have more space, so you push it back a little bit? And so this is all in your imagination, quote unquote, but it's really working in the energy space. You're really working in the energy space because where attention goes, energy flows. So whatever image you use, it doesn't really matter. It's really about creating this on the inside, creating the attention there, and then you will really patch up the energy. Yeah, just reshaping the bubble, sealing it. If it's too much of a sort of castle wall, you can break it down, put something else in place. You can also choose to have two different boundaries. I personally quite like that. I like having a sort of sparkly boundary on the outside that reflects energy back a little bit, but not in too of an intense way. But that does still let information in. And then I have a harder boundary on the inside that's more golden. That is really sort of for me to have my own space. And so on the outside there, I can interact, but it doesn't go in very deep. So those are some ideas. All right, so let's take a pause again there. I just want to check in with you. Are there any questions? Is that clear? Do you want me to go deeper on anything? I'll just wait a couple of seconds. And so I want to reiterate the point from before, where really it's when you come from this place inside of yourself, if you're able to imagine your boundaries being intact, knowing that you're worthy of having your own space, you're worthy of not being yelled at, etc., and you can just visualize the boundaries inside of yourself, you can also create that in the three-dimensional actual world. And when you come from there, come from that place of inner clarity, of love for yourself, communication becomes way, way easier. Yeah, so how to diffuse negative energy without taking it in. Perfect. So you use the word diffuse. So what you might play with is you might imagine putting a boundary around you or around your main boundary that's diffusing. then you create that intention. It's a diffusing mess. So my sparkles, they're kind of darker sparkles, do that. They diffuse a little bit. Yeah, good question. Any other ones like that you can play with? So this is really about finding an image that matches the energy you're wanting to create, because you can create anything. You can really create any kind of boundary. If you want to be, but know that there's consequences for each one of them. So I'll tell you a few textures, let's say. So you can have a really cloudy boundary that kind of wraps everything in love and it's really sweet. That's a beautiful boundary to have, but it might, if things really want to come in, they're going to come in because it's not strong enough. Let's say you can have, you can choose to have a boundary that is a mirror, and that is really confronting for the people around you. That is very much the kind of boundary where you're sending energies coming in and you're sending it right back. Some people have boundaries set that way, and they are then activators for people around them. They're really intense boundaries, and it does activate people quite a bit. They see themselves. And if that's you, you can choose to maybe dim the lights on that mirror a little bit, or make it a bit of a different mirror, or put mirror with that like pink cloud around it so that people can see themselves reflected in you, but that there's some love that comes with it as well. You can really play with what different textures are like. Yeah, okay. Mandy says, how to remember to stay true to your boundaries in the heat of the moment and shut down for a while and don't have the opportunity to set them. Yeah, perfect. So that's the next thing that we're going into. Perfect. You're right with me. Okay, so how do you enforce them in the day-to-day? So one thing you want to do is, yes, you can visualize, you can set your intention daily. And you want to do that from a place of love. So if you've been operating with the really permeable boundaries or really closed boundaries, or boundaries in a way that you're not happy with, you might want to reset that intention several times a day. And really, you really want to find a place of love for yourself first and do it from there. Then there's a few mindset things I wanted to share here. When you finally come to say your boundary, express it, what you're really doing there is you're educating someone on what is okay in your space and what is not okay in your space. You're not saying you're a bad person. You're not saying, I never want to see you again. You're saying, that is not okay with me. And that is an education. You're teaching. And you're responsible of what you teach people around you. So if you've been doing it in an unconscious way for a long time, now you're doing it in a conscious way. And so some people are more open to that learning than others, of course. So some people will resist that learning and get angry at you, and that can happen. But their reaction really belongs to them. They belong to them, you belong to you. And when you set a boundary, you're giving them information that it's theirs to do with as they see fit. They can choose to evolve, and it really is an opportunity for people to evolve at that point. And like I said, most people don't want to encroach on your boundaries. If they realize they did that, they'll feel like, oh no, I'm sorry I did that. And most often people will want to learn from that and be like, okay, that when I do that, that is not okay with her. Like, let me respect that. However, they might also not behave nicely. So there is a dynamic. Let's see if I wrote it there. Yeah. So there is a dynamic where somebody has had a certain benefit from encroaching your boundaries. And then all of a sudden you said, no more. They might try extra hard to get through. So their behavior might actually increase for a while. And that is extremely unpleasant and no fun at all. But remember what this is all about. This is all about You remembering that you are worthy and that you deserve to be treated in ways that respect the integrity of your energy. So when you're setting that boundary, a helpful way to do that is to do it about the behavior and not about the person. So it's really, if you can really name the behavior that they did that crossed a boundary. I didn't write it in my extra resources section here, but nonviolent communication is a brilliant way to set a boundary. So what you'll do is, well, I'm going to have you look that up, nonviolent communication, if you are interested. But the idea here is you're making a boundary for the behavior, but you're extending, if you choose, you're extending to have a relationship still beyond that. So if you can see my little screen here, it's like the boundary's here, but I can still have a relationship with you right here. So you can still extend a hand on the outside of that boundary. So if somebody has been having a lot of benefit from going beyond your boundaries for a lifetime, let's say it's your mom, a brother, sister, they are not going to like you putting a boundary because they're not going to be able to get that from you anymore. And so it's really about, you cannot get that from me anymore, and yet I still want a relationship with you as a person, but it has to respect these boundaries. Hold on. So if after it's being expressed, the boundary is still not respected, you're going to have to keep doing your self-work. You're going to keep having to remember that you're worthy. It is uncomfortable as all hell. It really is. It's way easier to cave in. It's way easier to say, okay, maybe that benefit of not having a boundary outweighs the benefit of having a boundary. And we do this all the time, and it's not wrong, and it's so okay if you want to go there. But just know that it does. Keep doing your self-work. And on top of that, you may need to express what the consequence will be if the boundary will not be respected. So it's that boundary, and it's like, I want to have a relationship with you outside of this boundary. And outside of this boundary, I want a relationship, but if you cannot respect my boundary, I am going to have to walk away from this relationship. I am going to have to look for a different job. I'm going to have to talk with your supervisor. I'm going to have to, there's going to be a real world consequence. And that is hard. That is really, really hard. Or I will no longer answer the phone when you call me, or I will have to cut our conversations to 6 minutes. I will put a timer on every single time. That kind of thing. It is hard, but you are worth that. And so are the people in your life. The people in your life are also worth having you at your best, having you in your own boundaries, knowing your own worth. So, yeah, so I'm going to just reread your question, see if that answers a little bit. Yeah, so I'm going to get to your question, Dahlia. That's a really good one. And bouncing back after a negative energy experience and often feel as if it's expected, but you need time. Yeah. So that's where those energy out exercises might be extra helpful. Energy out. So the conscious complaining, the etc. And really knowing like that doesn't belong to you. It's not yours to hold on to. Those things can help. All right. Bye, Zach. All right. So here's Dahlia's question. How do I keep them healthy on a day-to-day life? So again, we're coming back to awareness. So one thing, that visualization, yes, of like, keep checking in with your boundaries. How are they right now? How's my garden? And just tending to it. And you can do that for like a minute when you're washing your hands or brushing your teeth or wherever you are. You can just check in with that metaphor and tend real quick. Another thing that's really important is to start recognizing the feeling signs. What happens for you when your boundaries are breached? And knowing that you don't deserve to feel that way forever, that's a signal that boundaries need to be restored. So the awareness is a really good way to work with it. And one of my favorite tools that I worked with for months that I tell all my clients who ask me about boundaries is this awareness plus you add some protection. So if you can't quite visualize it in your bubble, like configuring it so that it has protection, what you can do is this very simple technique. This very simple technique is you imagine 4 life-size huge roses. And roses are a beautiful metaphor because they're a symbol of love, right? But they also have, what are they called? Ipin. They have spikes coming out of them. And for having a rose bush for the first time this year, those guys, like, you cannot come close if you're not careful. They are a really good metaphor for that. Thorns. Thank you, Emily. So you're going to imagine a really big rose in front of you. One to the right, one to the left, one to the back of you. And they are your energy bodyguards. And the symbol of them is like love can come in. Yes, love can come in, but don't mess. You got to treat this with respect. So what these roses do for you, what you can set them programmed to do, is that they will absorb any negative energy, any energy that you do not wish to receive inside of you, in your space. The rose will absorb it. And what you will notice is that as the rose absorbs this, eventually it might start absorbing more and more and sort of sag down and look a bit tired. At that point, what you do, so this is where you're going to need to keep aware in day-to-day life. You're going to need to keep aware, checking in. Exactly. How are your roses doing? And this you can do in split second. How are they? Oh, yeah, it's sagging. I need to throw it out of my space. Let that energy go back to neutral. So explode it, give it back to the divine. You put a new one up. You do that several times a day. If somebody's complaining, if one of those strangers is telling you their whole life story, you put a rose in between you and them. You let the rose absorb the negative. You listen. The rose absorbs the negative. If after 3 minutes it's already been such a charged story that the rose is sagging, you take it out, you explode it, you put a new rose. I once had a friend who would talk and talk and talk for like a good hour, and I would say like 2 words in the whole conversation. I started putting roses, I imagine like in an old school telephone cord, I imagine like putting a rose in between, and I'd be able to really listen in a neutral way. It wouldn't absorb it all. It would just be like, okay, just talking, no problem. And yeah, so that's a very quick tool you can really start using right away. But it does require that awareness. Also using the tools we've already covered. So this requires some presence. It requires some presence is just the right word. It requires some presence. It requires some diligence in your work. Just monitoring this. And at first, you need to monitor this quite consciously. But the thing is about our boundaries is that they are subconscious. They are operating whether we're aware or not. So when we work with them consciously, we can start reprogramming them. We can start rewriting the subconscious program so that after a while, we don't have to pay attention to them as intensely. So if you want to work on boundaries right now you use these tools a lot and you think about the boundaries and you are aware of where they are. You put the roses, you use your roses 100 times a day. You are reprogramming your boundaries essentially until they're sort of able to be at a new state and you don't have to pay attention to them anymore. This isn't something you need to start doing for the rest of your life. You do this for the rest of your life when new boundary issues come up, when you've got a new wave of like feeling extra worthy, when you're ready for a new level, then you reprogram your boundaries again. So final idea. If you do nothing else except for this one question, you're good. Ask for a new program. When it comes to your boundaries, it's just that. Ask for a new program. What energy is allowed in? What energy is allowed out. I forgot to write 2 others. What is not allowed in? What is not allowed out? So I really like the idea of what's not allowed in is that energy isn't necessarily reflected back. You're just invisible to that energy. That energy cannot even find you. So things like violence or complete disregard of your rights, disrespect, that stuff can't find me. Like, I will not create any kind of situation where that comes up. That is not, I'm not findable to that. So what I invite you to do, we are definitely going to close up this masterclass here, but this will be one homework that I invite you to do. Yes, exactly. This is law of attraction stuff. Absolutely. So I invite you to write out a list. What is allowed in and out of my space, like love and kindness and empathy and sweetness and joy and giggles and laughter and all of that yummy stuff? And what are you invisible to? And what are you simply not available for? So you write out those two lists for you to know, and for you to know on a conscious level, and then you work it on a subconscious level with the imagery. You work it with your roses. You train yourself to get to the next level, because yes, this is about attraction. Your boundaries are kind of signs saying what you're available for. They're the first place the universe meets you. So that's the first place you're going to want to say, I want to receive money. Yes, please give me money. I do not want to receive violence. I am not available for that. And so writing that out for yourself can be really, really helpful. Okay, so final slide is a big thank you. A really big thank you to you showing up live, participating the way you have. Amazing. I'm so grateful for you guys, and so glad we get to work on this stuff together. So thank you. And thank you. What was that previous slide? If boundaries are something you would like to go deeper into, I am available for one-on-one work. This is something we can really reprogram together. Sometimes we hit snags, we hit difficulties energetically, and it's hard for ourselves to work it through. Sometimes some deeper healing needs to happen. Sometimes some inner child stuff needs to happen for us to really be able to feel that worthiness of having boundaries. So that's really what I'm here for. So if that's something that you feel called towards, I invite you to set up a free 30-minute consult with me. I don't know. I don't think you can click on the screen there, but I will type it into the comments. When this becomes available, there will definitely be a link. So if you're interested in that, just send me an email. For now, that's going to be the simplest thing. And we can talk about how we can work with your boundaries. The second idea I'm toying with, boundaries are such a beautiful healing and learning for me that I am toying with the idea of setting up sort of boundary healing containers. So these are going to be sort of an online transformation journey, but really with the idea of workshopping this content. So it'll be for a couple of weeks, maybe 6 weeks or something, set up with the idea for you to upgrade your worthiness and to upgrade your boundaries and to upgrade what you're signaling to the universe that you're available for. So we'll use these tools, we'll use other tools, and we'll sort of workshop all of that over a 6-week period. It's really just an idea for now. It's at the idea phase. So if you're super interested and you need this to happen, then email me. Okay, yeah, great. So I'm thinking if I have at least 6 people willing to sign up for that, I will run it. Otherwise, I will wait for another time. So that is pretty much it. The last thing I want to say, there will be more masterclasses on intuition, chakras, grounding, energy cores, law of attraction and manifestation. I'm thinking of also adding one on meditation. So stay tuned. They're going to be roughly every 2 weeks, about the same format. I loved it today. If you know people who would be a really good fit for this masterclass and might be really good people to listen to this. I'm offering it for the next week as a replay for free. After that, it will be purchasable online for, I think it'll be about $27. And so that will also include recordings of the tools and some worksheets for you to work through as well. So that is it. I have some extra resources on this slide as well. If you want the slides, let me know. I will send them to you. All of that through email. There's a really, really good book called The Dance of Anger, A Woman's Guide to Changing Patterns in Intimate Relationships. So if you have some intimate relationships that are crossing your boundaries almost permanently, this is the book for you to start rewiring those boundaries. That's really where that idea comes from. If you're worried about people being angry at you when you set boundaries, that is really a fantastic book that works you through that. Other book that I've been reading these past 2 weeks, full of content, full of a really energy perspective, is Energetic Boundaries: How to Stay Protected and Connected in Work, Love, and Life. It is a bit more complex and more energetically heavy. It can be really interesting for some of you. And I also found one of my mentors has this ultimate guide to saying no, 19 word-for-word scripts for almost any situation. So if you struggle with saying no, I invite you to look that one up. It looks like this. So I think I just Googled how scripts for saying no if you want to do that right away. Maria Forleo is the bomb. I've learned a lot from her. So that is really it. We are done today. I'm going to stop share. Okay, yes, Marie TV, amazing. Bye. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. If you really enjoyed this masterclass and you got a lot out of it, also, if you would write me a few comments, I would love to use those as well. All right. Bye, everybody.